So here we have a 2008 Honda Civic Type R. It's got roughly 110,000 miles on the clock, and it's the 2 litre petrol engine. So today I'm going to be carrying out a small service on this car, and as part of the service I'm going to need to get under that bonnet. I'm going to be changing the oil and filter. As with all oil and filter changes I always pull the dipstick up a bit and take off the oil filler cap just to let the air back into the engine, allow it to drain a bit more smoothly. I can't see the oil filter from the top, so I'm guessing we access everything from underneath. So next we'll take the vehicle up and see what we find. So as with most cars, it's got a big under tray belly pan. This one's got a smaller metal section, which hopefully we'll be able to access the sump plug and oil filter through that. So I'll start by taking this off anyway. It's only 10mm nuts, I believe. There might be some other plastic fittings. But anyway, I'll take this off first. One sump plug and the oil filter. Yeah, should be able to access it all through there. So as you can see, we've removed this panel. We've got access here for the sump plug. The oil filter is going to be a little bit more tricky, but we'll show you that in a moment. This is a 17mm head size. I generally use a single hex socket. It just reduces the chance of rounding things off. Always a good idea to use a single hex where you can. Nothing wrong with a spanner, of course, but that's just my preference. So the engine is fairly warm, which means that's going to come out pretty quick. So have your drainer ready. Just means the engine will drain down quicker, as opposed to a cold engine where you might have to leave it with a drainer underneath dripping for quite some time. I think I've still got a bit on my hand. Yeah. Right, we'll leave that now for 5 or 6 minutes, let it drain down. So that's been draining now for a little while. It's down to a slow, steady drip. One thing to check before you put the sump plug back in, as you can see, it's got an aluminium sealing washer on there. You can pick one of those up when you go to collect your parts from your local motor factor or online, wherever you get your bits from. But generally they're good to go again 3 or 4 times probably. Just make sure it hasn't got any splits or marks on it. Hasn't been crushed. That looks good. So we'll go ahead and replace that sump plug, refit it. And I'm just going to nip it up. Don't have to go too mad. That should do nicely. So this is going to be a little bit tricky to show whilst recording. You can see up through this access panel here, you've got the drive shaft here and a shield there, and then just on top over there's the white filter, which I'm going to be unscrewing. We'll try and record it from inside the driver's side wheel arch. Hopefully you can get an idea of what's going on. Right, so I've already had a feel of this, and it is just about turnable by hand, which is very lucky because I'm so restricted for space there. It would be tricky to get tools in there to crack it loose. It's going to make a little bit of a mess, but unavoidable, unfortunately. There we go, one oil filter. Just make sure when you remove the oil filter that the rubber seal is still in it, because sometimes they can get stuck. As you can see, they only pull out. They can get stuck and left behind up there on the housing. So make sure that's come out with your old filter. All right, I'm going to put that down to drain for a little while. So with oil filter removal, I generally just use a big pair of slide grips, but as you can imagine, the access up there is very tight and it might be a bit of a job to get these in. The only other tool that I would have used would have been one of these, which you can buy these sets relatively cheaply. But yeah, all different sizes for different filters. And that just slots on, and then you put your ratchet in the back. It'd still be a bit of a squeeze, but I think there's more chance of loosening something with that. So this filter only has to be done up hand tight. It's a good idea to put a smear of oil or a little bit of grease, something on this rubber seal. I generally just get the old filter. I've pulled that seal out a bit now. And plonk them both together just to get a bit of old engine oil on the rubber seal. You don't need loads. Hopefully it just stops it from sticking and getting stuck, so next time we should be able to undo it by hand again. I can't even see where I'm going with this. I'll have to come out and have another look. Got to be somewhere there. I can't see anything at all from this angle. It's just going by feel. You can probably see more from where you are, actually. Ah, that's it. And that is as tight as I can get it by hand. So I'm just going to have a bit of a clean up now of all the oil that's dripped out, and then we'll crack on. Right, back on the ground. Sorry about the last video of the oil filter. It's very difficult to record, as you can see. There wasn't much space up there at all. But it is relatively straightforward. Literally spin one filter off and spin the new one on. We're not too sure how that's going to come out until we've edited it, but hopefully you get an idea of what's needed to be done. So I'm just going to top up, or refill the engine now. So the dipstick is still out a little bit. I might take that right out, actually. helps when you're pouring oil in to let some air out of the engine. So when you go to your motor factors to get your parts, you're going to need your registration number, and they should be able to recommend what viscosity of oil you need, and the various brands. There's so many on the market now. But you should be able to pick up, I mean, I've got a 5 litre tub of oil for this, somewhere around the £60 mark at the time of recording. The oil filter shouldn't cost you any more than £10. So they recommended 4.4 litres for this engine. I always like to underfill slightly. I'm going to put around about 4, just over 4 in there, and see where that's at on the dipstick. Mainly because you know, it's easier to keep topping up in small dribs and drabs and checking with the dipstick. Try and get it as close to the maximum mark as you can, rather than putting in the amount that's recommended and finding that actually that's a little bit too much. It's too much engine oil can do damage just like an underfilled engine can. Right, okay, so we've got, let me see, yeah, just a shade over 4 litres in there. So I'm going to start it up, let it tick over. You don't need to rev it at all. It's not a good idea to rev an engine that's been drained and refilled, 'cause sometimes it can take a little while for the oil to circulate. So I'm just going to, oil pressure light's gone straight out. Just let it tick over for a few seconds. That should do. Yeah, it's got an aftermarket exhaust on this, so it's a little bit louder than normal. Okay, so now the oil's circulated and filled the galleries and refilled the oil filter, we'll leave it for, I don't know, about 3 minutes, and then check on the dipstick and see where the level's at. Right, so now that's stood for 3 or 4 minutes, it's all settled. You can see on the dipstick the minimum and maximum, the 2 little holes. We'll dip that and see what level we've got. Make sure it's pushed all the way down. And there you can see, still got, I don't know, about 6mm left to go up to the maximum. So I'll put a little bit more in as a top up, just very small dribs and drabs, and check it again. And that's all you've got to do really, just keep repeating the process until you get to the maximum mark, or as close to the maximum mark as you can. Right, that'll do. I started out with 4.4 litres in the jug, which is what they recommend. Still got a little dribble left in there. Okay, we'll leave that for a little while. You don't need to run it again because it's already circulated and filled all the galleries. We'll check again in another 3 or 4 minutes. Right, so this has stood now for another 3 or 4 minutes. That's all the way down. And hopefully you can see there, that is just touching the bottom of the maximum hole, fill level hole. So that's a good place to be. The longer it stands, obviously the level will creep up fractionally, so I won't be adding any more oil to that. it actually took 4.2 litres. So it's just as well I didn't go ahead and just glug the whole 4.4 in there, because I would end up having to drain a bit down. Next job is to just take it up in the air and put that small tin under tray inspection hut cover back on. So that's the job done. Under tray's back on. All that's left now is just to give it a run round the block and double check for any leaks, and hopefully everything will be fine. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully the video's been of some help for you, and if it has, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It will help our channel out no end. Cheers.